This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the bottom feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, and welcome to the Best of the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'll be joined again by Fred Schweer of PoolRx. We're going to talk about the compatibility and some questions you may have about PoolRx in this episode to get more in depth with the product. And PoolRx Plus is a great way to reduce your chlorine usage in the pool and eliminate all types of algae in your pool. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy coaching program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. So PoolRx is great as long as everything's within range, but there are two factors that you have to be aware of. One of them, of course, is any metals in the water, and the second one is high cyanuric acid. So let's start with the metals.
To your point, normal pool chemistry ranges are a range, right? There's a wide range there for air, but there are limits. And when we talk about normal pool chemistry ranges, we also want to include metals. If they're on well water, or if they have old copper plumbing or an old copper heat exchanger, if they've been using other copper-based algaecides, those are all sources of metals coming into your water. And normal pool chemistry suggests that 0.2 parts per million or less is considered normal for copper in the water. At 0.2, actually 0.1 is for iron. So it's a very low amount that is considered normal range. And the reason why I bring that up is you want to make sure your water's in normal range, including the metals. And that, again, is only in certain markets around the country, only from certain areas. Typically by now, if you're listening to this, you kind of know where you're at with that. And you know that you should probably test a pool for metals at least once a year just to see where you're at, depending on where you are in the country. And why that's important with PoolRx, guys, is we are adding the right amount of mineral to the water based on the gallons. Our minerals are chelated, so they're protected, but we can't protect the existing metal in the water, right? So not only are we adding the right amount to the water and ours is protected, but our minerals are also making chlorine much more active and available. And why that's important, if you have high metal content in the water, be it copper, iron, or any other metal, we don't want to get to a saturation point, right? We want that saturation point is possible if you have elevated metals. And what that means is if you're saturated, that metal in the water, that non-chelated, non-PoolRx metal in the water is much more sensitive to oxidation or falling out of solution. And so we don't want that to happen to you. So that's why we say test first. And then, again, like I mentioned, we're making chlorine much more active and available. And so that, you put a PoolRx in, you don't realize you're extremely elevated in your metals. And you add chlorine to the pool, and that raises, that chlorine level. And next thing you know, you start seeing, brown spots from the iron, or you see, purple or black from the copper. Again, that's not our minerals, but it's a reaction from ours taking up space and ours making the chlorine more active. So long story short, and again, this is only a small percentage of folks out there that do have metal problems, but I like to take the time to go through this so you understand that there is value in testing for metals in your water, getting those down before installing PoolRx, and then using PoolRx as directed. You're not going once you put PoolRx in, like I mentioned earlier, the chelation of the product is so strong that you're not going to get an accurate reading. So if you're noticing an elevated copper level after putting PoolRx in, don't worry about that. You're safe. We're allowed to have a higher level that's safe because it is chelated. At the same point, if you notice that you put a PoolRx in and there is zero copper in the water and you're thinking, shoot, there should be a reading, I just put PoolRx in there. Don't worry about that either. Like I said, the chelation is so strong that the reagent copper test cannot see through it accurately. So you may get a zero reading, you may get an elevated reading. Either way, you're safe. The PoolRx is working, and you're going to be fine. So again, just to reiterate, normal pool chemistry, which is 90% of the people out there, super simple.
Most pools are going to have metals in them, and it's easy to test with the copper test strip. And some people have the Color Q2X Pro 9. I recommend this test kit, by the way, for the pool pros, the Lamont Color Q2X Pro 9, because it has copper and iron built into the photometer. But this is not a huge problem here in my area, but there are some areas where metal gets introduced to the water. So I understand that. And then the CuLator product has been proven scientifically and in labs and to be what you would use to reduce the metal in the water before using PolarX. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to get metals out of the water. See You Later is one of those products that we definitely believe in. It's a little polymer bag that drops in the skimmer, and as the water flows over it, the more water flow, the faster it works. But as the water flows over it, it physically bonds to all the trace metals in the water, and it catches them in this little bag. It takes, depending on flow, it'll take 2 to 3, maybe even 4 weeks, depending on how much metal's in the water and how much flow you have. But what I like about it is it does pull all the trace metal out of the water, even the stuff you're not testing for. So you might be testing for copper and iron, and you can take that out, but then it'll also pull out, all the other metals in the water, manganese, cobalt, and other metals as well. So it does work great. There's also other solutions out there. There's some these metal out products and metal freeze and super stain outs. These are typically a sequestering agent that is holding that metal in solution and trying to filter some of it out, making it a little larger and filtering it out. Those can help. The thing with sequestering agents, again, is they do break down from time and chlorine. And so you got to keep adding those. And also, alum flocculation works really good. It's basically a flocculant that coagulates the metals and drops them to the bottom to be vacuumed out. So there's a lot of methods to take metal out of the water. I think the easiest one, it might take a little longer, is the CuLator, just because it's kind of self-contained. And it's easy it just takes a little bit longer, but it does work really well. They have the 1 part per million bag that goes in the skimmer, and they also have the 4 part per million one that's they call it Gatorade, that can go into the pump basket that can pull it out faster. But again, if you do have metals, you're going to want to test for them first, and then you're going to want to take them out with whatever method you choose, and then you want to retest before adding the PoolRx. If you are using the CuLator, you're going to want to take that bag out of the skimmer or pump basket, whichever one you're using. The CuLator will pull our minerals out of the water. So that's the only one that will pull our minerals out of the water. The alum flocculation will as well, but typically these other sequestering agent, liquid metal out type products don't affect us because of our chelation. So you're safe there. But CuLator is fantastic. We recommend it. Easy to use. Just follow their directions.
And then the other one, the high cyanuric acid, you want to touch on that?
Yeah. So high cyanuric acid, again, is not a problem for PoolRx. In fact, we are great in high cyanuric environments because our minerals are killing and preventing that microalgae. And in high cyanuric environments, the chlorine lasts longer but kills slower. And so that's where we are taking the pressure off that slow-acting chlorine by eliminating, preventing the algae. And so now that slow-acting chlorine is more available to really clarify the water and keep it safe. So that's the benefit in high cyanuric pools. But you also have to be aware of your adjusted alkalinity calculation.
And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. Yeah, and we can touch a little bit on the adjusted alkalinity or carbonate alkalinity, because I think it's important because the range that you want your alkalinity is 80 to 120. I don't think we stated the ranges, but 7.2 to 7.8 pH, and then calcium hardness 200 to 400. So the alkalinity is an important aspect of pool chemistry. A lot of it has to do with the fact that, of course, there's the buffer. If it gets too low, you add some acids to the pool, it's going to drop the pH really low in the pool rapidly. That's one of the reasons why you don't want your alkalinity at 60 or 50 or 40. So with this, most people, let's just say California, and we'll use this as a baseline. Most pools here, 100 parts per million of cyanuric acid is pretty normal. 150. It's not unusual to get to a pool with 200. So this is also something that you should be doing regardless of using PoolRx. It should be something that you do for the LSI and do for pool balancing. Is that correct? It's not just a PoolRx type thing.
Absolutely, David. Yeah, let's talk about, again, CoolRx is great in high cyanuric acid environments because we are, killing and preventing the microalgae, which frees up the slow-acting chlorine from the high cyanuric. And that's the benefit of using CoolRx in these high cyanuric pools, is that the minerals are doing the hard work of killing and preventing the algae. And so that slow-acting chlorine in the water caused by the high cyanuric is now more available to clarify the water and keep it safe. And to your point, David, cyanuric acid does affect carbonate alkalinity. And there is an adjusted alkalinity calculation, and that's also affected by your pH. But as a general rule, when the pH is 7.4, it's about your alkalinity reading that you're getting on your reagent. When your cyanuric acid is above 100 parts per million, your alkalinity reading is 1/3 lower than it's telling you. Now, this becomes more and more important the higher and higher the cyanuric acid gets. And because what happens is, as the cyanuric acid goes up to that 150, 175, 200, 250 range, it's affecting your alkalinity even more. And then also it's getting more saturated in the water. And so what's happening is the water is, double the legal amount of cyanuric acid. And then if you're not adjusting your alkalinity, the water is out of balance. So your alkalinity is down in 20 or 40 range. Your pH is in normal range, below 7.8, but your cyanuric acid is saturated. And when that water's out of balance, the cyanuric, whatever's in saturation, is going to come out of solution. That cyanuric acid can actually come out of solution, and it can catch on to our copper minerals in the water, and it turns into copper cyanurate. And copper cyanurate is a form. It comes in a form of a kind of a purple dust that will stick to scale, and it does not go away. You can try and brush it. You can try to vacuum it. It will not go away until you lower your cyanuric acid, ideally to 30 or 40, and get the water back in balance, and then that will actually dissolve back into solution. Again, we are great in high cyanuric environments, fantastic, and there's a wide range for error on this. But as a general rule, when we're talking about this, we want to make sure, with or without PoolRx, you do want to keep your alkalinity reading in normal range, and it's a very simple. And as a general calculation, it's 1/3, meaning, to your point, if you're reading 90, it's really 60. But if you're reading 120 on alkalinity, and your cyanuric is high, it's not 120, it's 1/3 lower, which would actually make it 80. And so you're in good shape there. You wouldn't have to adjust. If your alkalinity is reading 60, and you have to adjust it, I mean, really, your alkalinity is at 40 when your cyanuric acid is super high, and that's where you're running into this copper cyanurate potential. We've been talking about this for many years, and so a lot of service guys are aware of this, and so we're not getting as many questions as we as we used to. And guys are much more educated regarding, water chemistry and cyanuric acid. So this is less and less an issue. But if you're new to PoolRx and if you're new to the pool business, it's just one of those things you want to be aware of, and so you can keep your water normal range. And it's very easy to adjust alkalinity up and inexpensive when necessary.
And, also low alkalinity causes mottling in pools, especially if they're newer. So having such a low alkalinity is bad for a lot of things. Baking soda is the best way to raise alkalinity without raising the pH. I call it baking soda. I guess in the industry they call it sodium bicarbonate, but it's
Yeah,
basically just baking soda.
yeah, sodium bicarb, about 1.5 pounds of that per 10,000 gallons will raise you by 10 points. We're talking about cyanuric acid. If you're above 100, that's when you start considering your adjusted alkalinity calculation to keep that water closer to normal range. And if you can do that, high cyanuric, is not an issue for us. 200, 250, it's not an issue. But again, it goes back to you and your water balance. I would urge you to get your customers to get some fresh water in there, so you're not having to fight this water balance issue when cyanuric acid gets so high. I mean, you're just playing the roller coaster game there. But I would urge you guys to teach your customers about cyanuric acid and trying to get some fresh water in these pools every few years.
One good thing about PolarX that I like is that, let's say, this is what I do with the pools that are like around 150 in cyanuric acid. I'll use the PolarX in there, and then I'll, of course, cut the tablets down to minimal. Then I'll use liquid chlorine. And what I like about the PolarX is, since it makes the chlorine much more effective, you can actually reduce the cyanuric acid level that season by not adding more cyanuric acid to the pool with overusing tablets. And naturally, the cyanuric acid level is going to, drop over the winter, and with some rain and some dilution, adding water in the summer, things like that. And so it's a great way actually to reduce cyanuric acid in the pool, in my opinion, without doing a partial full drain. A lot of customers just don't like draining their pool, and it's kind of a good stopgap. And I use this method all the time out there.
Yeah, I agree. To your point, if you're able to use about 40 to 50% less chlorine with PoolRx, if you're using tabs, obviously you're putting less tabs in, and the less tabs you put in, the slower your cyanuric acid level will rise. So yeah, you definitely have a benefit of prolonging the water life with PoolRx, because your cyanuric acid levels won't go up as quickly because you're not using as much chlorine. So definite benefit to not only the pool service guy, but to the homeowner.
And if you're looking for other podcast episodes, you can, of course, go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, there's a podcast icon that'll take you to over 1,800 episodes. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.